you can add stuff to yourself, but fundamentally you haven't really grown. You haven't really changed. So how do I know if I'm really growing? Well, it's a really, really clear indicator is the level of selflessness that one has been able to cultivate. What became very obvious to me was that there was a very, very clear disconnect between one's inner experience and how much peace or happiness or tranquility or love that they could cultivate within themselves. One thing I'd say to high performers all the time, and life hack of life hacks, is that if you want a better life, stop thinking about you so much. You're going to be dead very soon. You haven't got time to lose.
Max Stevens, I'd love it if we could start with your journey. What's the journey you've been on that's brought you to this point?
I was lucky / unfortunate that I grew up in a drug-addicted household. And for anyone who understands the literature around the children of addicts will understand that the pain point is generally always the same, which is that if my insert parent, so it was my dad, so if my dad had really loved me, he would have been able to get healthy. And because he wasn't able to do that, I must not be lovable. There must be something wrong with me. Yeah. And that pain point normally plays itself out in one of two directions. Either the child will grow up and seek the confirmation of that belief in their life. So they normally won't amount to much, will normally be quite self-destructive in some ways because they're going, see, it's true. Whereas it can also play out where the child will grow up and seek disconfirming evidence of that belief. And so normally they will attempt to heal themselves through the acquisition of achievement, but their relationship with performance and success will be highly dysfunctional because they still have the same pain point internalized. I was just lucky that I fell into the second category, which then gave me this like insatiable drive and obsession to become successful. That then took me to, but I was still in a tremendous amount of pain. That then took me to India when I was 17 or 18. And that was one of the most transformative experiences I'd had. It was right at the end of when I'd finished school. So I was about 17, 18 at the time. And when I was walking through the streets of India, I went past through this sort of slum area. And there was a guy sitting on the side of the road in the slums who was very clearly homeless and looked quite malnourished. And he was sitting on the side of the road in like a meditative position. And I turned to him and said, and very important detail, and he was crying. So he was sitting on the side of the road in a meditative position and was crying. And I turned to him and said, "Oh, sir, I don't mean to bother you. I was just making sure that you were okay." And he looked up at me and said, No, I'm completely fine. And I said, "Wow, you speak perfect English." And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, I'm sorry. I noticed you were in tears. Are you okay?" And he said, "Oh, no. These are happy tears." And I said, "Oh, that's great. Like, did you get good news or, you know?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Well, why are you so happy?" And he said, "Because I am." And that never left me. That was like a crack in the frame of how I was sort of making sense of the world, which was there seemed to be what became very obvious to me was that there was a very, very clear disconnect between one's inner experience and how much peace or happiness or tranquility or love that they could cultivate within themselves that didn't seem to be connected to an outer experience. And my life's mission up until that point was I needed the outer world to be a particular way in order for me to be okay. And it became inescapably clear that even at 17, I had more than he ever will, and yet he was happier than I'll ever be. And so that then got me very, very interested in the practice of meditation and personal development. And I was still operating from this place of a lot of dysfunction when it came to my relationship with wanting to do well in life. But I was fortunate because I was quite obsessive. I also became very obsessed with meditation as a practice. And that took me 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 6,000 hours deep into the practice. So I wasn't doing like 20 minutes a day, 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there. I was doing 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day, 5 hours a day. And as I was going deeper and deeper into my practice, that pain actually became more and more intensified until finally, there was a day, I remember it very vividly, where this belief that I had carried was finally able to get separate from it, not free of it, but just separate from it, where I could articulate what I just articulated to you, which is, I believe that if my dad had really loved me, he would have been able to get healthy. He would have been able to get clean, because the love that he should have for me should be enough to get him over the line when it comes to his addiction. And because he wasn't able to do that, there must be something wrong with me. Like, could finally like say it. And for any of your listeners who may be familiar with developmental theory, there's a very, very famous developmental psychologist whose name is Robert Kegan. And Robert Kegan's idea is that we can tell a marker of core human development is what's called the subject-object conflation, which is the idea that me as the subject and my beliefs as the object, yeah, if these things are fused, then it's not even accurate to say that I have beliefs. It's more accurate to say that my beliefs have me. They are driving me. It's just that because I have no distance or space or separation from them to be able to look at them. And that was me up until basically that point. And finally, I was able to create this space where I could see it like out in front of me. This is what's been driving my life. And I asked myself, well, is this belief actually true? Yeah. And like, even like the definition of the word belief, it's the acceptance of an alleged fact without proof. And I thought, okay, like, is this belief true? And I went and had a look, and I said, well, Max, just notice that your dad has been struggling with addiction since long before you were born, right? Long before you were born. And just because you have now suddenly appeared, to say that your dad should or shouldn't need to act in certain ways just because I'm around, it was quite an epistemically arrogant and quite honestly a childish position. Like, and it would make sense because I internalized it from when I was very young. And I asked myself, okay, well, if this wasn't true, what would the implications of that be? And one of the implications would be that I am lovable, and actually I am all right, and that there isn't anything wrong with me. And in that moment, it was like a bolt of lightning that hit my nervous system, and I could feel my whole body starting to rewire itself. And I was free for the first time. And what also became clear, because I was surrounded by a lot of high performers at the time, I started my work working with a lot of high performing athletes. And what became very, very clear to me when I went back out into the world and was working with these athletes was, you're doing the same thing. You're in just as much pain as I am, just in your own way. And it's actually pain that's driving your relationship with your own performance as well, your own sense of inadequacy, your own sense of fear, your own sense of self-judgment, or a need to prove oneself. And so that got me very, very interested in like the archetype of the high performer and like what actually makes someone a high performer in the first place, and how healthy or unhealthy is that really? And that then sort of opened up a door into the work that I'm doing now.
What was thank you for that. What was your relationship like with your mother?
Good. Yeah, like my mum has always been my rock. She separated from my dad when I was 3, by and large, because after I was born, my dad sort of relapsed again, and my mum said, "Okay, no, like this isn't going to work." So my mum has always been in my corner and has been my rock in a lot of ways. And I spent a lot of time in my teenage years, again, I don't know how normal this is around most teenagers, but it was certainly the case for me. I spent many years like mistreating my mum and things like that. And so now we have a great relationship. And looking back, she's always been in my corner, which I'm very grateful for.
I think it's probably is quite common. Like they say, what is it, like fatherlessness in the home, and that kind of when you're going through your teenage years or whatever, challenging authority, etc. So I think I would imagine it would be quite common. Is your father still around?
Yes, he's okay now.
Yeah, a good relationship now.
Yes, I think that was what made it heartbreaking. Was we never had a bad relationship. It was
Okay.
just it was just I misappropriated my role as someone who needed to save him, and I failed, in doing so.
One of the things I thought about then when you mentioned how you're sort of extrapolating out like fact, truth from that situation, where you go, well, he had his addiction before I was born, therefore that became an indicator for you where you could separate those things out that you'd misequated. So I wonder, like, if someone's listening now who, let's say, maybe they do have a parent with addiction, but it came around the time when actually they came into the world, how would you advise them look at that? Because they don't have the same sort of obvious marker that you were able to point to.
Oh, yeah, certainly. So it gets us into a deeper conversation about almost like the nature of forgiveness. And so, all the sort of like, if I was speaking with somebody um, whose parent had addictive symptoms since from a stage after from when they were born, the thing that I would say is, well, addiction is not a problem. Addiction is a solution. And so the question becomes like, what is it a solution for? Yeah. And so addiction is a very, very thorny like topic that I'm in some ways qualified and in some ways not qualified to speak about. But the premise or practice like around forgiving my dad in my case, or forgiving whoever this person's is parent, is one thing. One of the sort of things that I like to explore around the nature of forgiveness is that forgiveness is actually an insight rather than a process. And the insight is this: what this person did to me was actually not about me at all. So like the classic sort of archetype around like hurt people will invariably hurt people. And there's like a great story that goes with that, which is like a man dies and goes into purgatory and is about to be judged by God as to whether he made it into heaven or hell. And God meets him and says, "I'm sorry, you didn't make it because of all of the pain that you've caused in your life for other people." And he says, "But Lord, it wasn't my fault. It was my parents. My parents didn't give me enough love, which had me act in dysfunctional ways, which meant that I hurt people in the world, and I'm really sorry." And God turns back to him and says, "That's a really good point. Actually, that's a great point." And he pulls up the parents and says, "This is your fault. Like you didn't give your son or daughter enough love, and because of that, they then acted out in dysfunctional ways, which hurt people in the world. This is your fault." And they go, "But Lord, it wasn't our fault. Like we were carrying our own pain from different experiences that we've had, which meant that we were misattuned with our son or daughter, which had them then act in dysfunctional ways, which then hurt people in the world. We're really sorry, but it wasn't our fault." And God goes, "That's a really good point." And God goes back and back and back and back and back, all the way back until the Garden of Eden, and finds the snake and says, "This is your fault. You are the cause of all of this." And the snake turns back to God and says, "Yes, Lord, this is my fault. I am very sorry. But God, I couldn't help it. It's in my nature." And he looks God in the eyes and says, I wonder who created me." And so like the principle of the story, is that blame and what would you say, pain in some ways, it ultimately becomes untenable. So like we blame our parents, and our parents got it from somewhere, who got it from somewhere, who got it from somewhere. And I often think that that's why in a lot of theological literature they talk about forgiveness as though it has this like metaphysical quality, because in some ways when we forgive, we break that chain. I'm no longer at the risk of handing this on to anybody else accidentally or otherwise. And so for anyone who's in that position, who finds themselves feeling resentful or in pain around things that people have done, quote unquote, to them, the thing that I would say is just realize that they haven't done it to you at all.
Yeah, it's like, that's a really interesting sort of framework. Like blame is like unsustainable in some ways. It keeps on getting kicked down the road to the next person or thing or whatever. One thing that I really like, actually, at the moment, I can't remember where I heard it, but it was like, I think in modern society, you know, we're also trauma aware, trauma informed, and stuff in this new age, and that's great. But we sometimes forget actually what are the great qualities that you've got, which you've picked up from your parents. Because especially in the world of high performers, right? You've got this double-edged sword, these two sides, but it's like sometimes we don't stop to go, yeah, but like the my grit, my determination, my sensitivity, all this, you know, okay, I might have got an alcohol addiction, but also look at all this other stuff, and that's come from them as well, and I think that's a nice lens to think about sometimes in a sort of has like a gratitude sort of overlay to it, which is something I really like doing at the moment.
Yes, yes. It's I'm reminded of the superhero archetype. You know, you get bitten, but you also get these superpowers. You know, and so it comes
Mm-hmm.
down to it is often the case that our the pain in our lives and our greatest strengths are sort of two sides of the same coin. And I think there's a really really powerful idea within the sort of superhero archetype. It's something I have come to appreciate as I've gotten older. Is it's also in some ways about coming to terms with what your life is not going to be. So if you've seen like the you know, even like the original Spider-Man movies that with Tobey Maguire from like 2003, you know, and like that's my sort of era. You know, I was a
Yeah,
kid
same. I
when those
remember when
movies came out.
they were new.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Likewise, right? Likewise. And so there's like a really, really great scene after Peter has he's killed the Green Goblin and saved, I think it's New York City, and he's at the telephone, like a old like payphone, you know, to put, and he puts in the coins to
Mm-hmm.
call Mary Jane, who's his neighbor, this girl that he loves, and she answers the phone and she goes, "Hello, hello," and he's just standing there with the phone, and she goes, "Oh," and she hangs it up, and he's still got the phone like sitting to his ear, and he says something to the effect of like, uh, you know, I love you and I have always loved you, but you and I can never be together because if my enemies ever found out about you, uh, and something happened to you, I could never forgive myself. So this will be the last time I tell you this because who am I? I am Spider-Man. And so it's like that he comes to accept all of himself as insofar as like not only his role and what his role will be in the world, but also what he can't have as a result of playing that role. And so in some ways it, you know, we want the superpowers without getting bitten, so to speak.
Mm. Yeah, and I think it's funny, isn't it, where you'll have done that kind of thought experiment where someone says, you know, if I took away all your pain, but you lost all your drive, and you'll be content and happy. It's almost like the blue pill thing or whatever. It's like, would you take it? And I feel like most people in the high performer kind of avatar would be like, nah, fuck it, I'll keep the pain and I'll I'll like
Yeah.
because there's yeah there's enjoyment in that kind of relentless drive. I don't know. It's what do you think about that?
I don't agree. Like I think that the high performers are in a lot of pain. High performers are high performers because they are in a lot of pain. They are
Mm-hmm.
attempting to allay some sort of internal um, feeling of inadequacy, pain point, etc., by achieving an external outcome in the world. And these spaces are not connected. And so they get caught in this infinite regress where what happens is they have this internal pain point. Then they go out looking for achievement under the belief that this will allay my pain, although they can't articulate it in this way, but
Mm-hmm.
this is the pattern. What happens is they achieve, insert whatever it is, and there's a temporary allaying of that pain. It temporarily leaves them. And they go, oh, fuck, that's nice. But what happens is as that pain point starts to reaccumulate because it hasn't really been dealt with,
Mm-hmm.
um, only strategized around, is there's a new thing that they then go, oh, well, if this didn't do it, maybe this will. Yeah. And there's a new, whatever, instead of 1 million in revenue, it's 5 million. Instead of 5, it's 20. Instead of 20, it's 100. I've got one client at the moment. He runs a $350 million business, and is, and I asked him, what do you want? And he said, to get to 500 million. The job's not done yet, so to speak. So like, this is the game that they get caught in. But the reason why that particular client wants to get to that number is the same reason that they wanted to get from 0 to 1 million in the first place. Like, it's just an infinite regress that they get caught in. And it's normally two things that break that frame. Number one is a health crisis. So normally it's the classic story of like the CEO has a heart attack in the boardroom, or they start to get nosebleeds at their desk, or they collapse on the way home, or something like that. So it's normally a health crisis, or it's a divorce. Like, the family unit breaks down because they're an emotionally absent parent. The partner grows tired of feeling unseen and unheard. The kids grow up and never really see mum or dad or whoever it is, and eventually that frame breaks in the end. And it's normally those two things. It's actually normally on the back of one of those two things that clients end up finding me. So that's normally where my journey sort of begins with them. I often joke with clients, the thing that is unique about the human animal is that we all think our problems are really unique, and they're not. It's a very, very tried and true story.
If you're anything like me, you're probably good at starting habits, but fail to stick to them over the long term. There's probably one or two, whether that be going to the gym or taking the dog for a walk, but struggle to maintain others around career, relationship, or life goals. If you're a long-term listener of the podcast, this won't be the first time you've heard me talk about habits and leveraging public accountability. That's why I created indiip, the tool that helps you build healthy habits and stick to them. After creating your free account, you'll be given your own personal public profile link, which you can share with your friends, your family, coach, or followers. And when someone clicks that link, you'll be given a real-time notification that someone is watching your habits. I can't tell you how much of a motivator it is when you're stuck in a procrastination cycle and this little eyeball pops up with a number next to it. My productivity has gone through the roof since I started using it. It's that effective. Luckily for you, I'm giving away 100 free VIP months to my podcast listeners. There's no credit card required. Head to indiip.com/podcast. That's deep with 2 I's, indiip.com/podcast, or follow the links in the episode description below. Let's start crushing our habits today. I feel like I can identify with like the super unhealthy, overworked, fill in the blank. Like, that was me in my 20s. And I had like the panic attack at work, the ambulance coming out, like horrendous, to then like be like, okay, shit needs to change. And then I think I've also been on like another journey of kind of finding meditation and stuff and becoming more relaxed and less like attached to external outcomes, etc. However, I think I was in that kind of world for a bit, and then I think I felt like almost like a bit of apathy on a loss of that drive, and then kind of like then I sort of like started building it back on top again. Like I don't work myself as hard as I used to, or at least I do it in a much smarter way, if that makes sense. So I make sure it's periodized and I have some rest or whatever. But don't get me wrong, like I still charge pretty hard towards my goals. What is the question? So I guess what I'm asking you is, how do we achieve our goals and have that drive, but not become apathetic?
Why would you become apathetic?
I suppose another way of framing it would be, well, if you take away all my pain, the thing that's driving me, then I'll lose that motivation. I'll lose my edge.
Yeah, no. So no, not at all. So okay, great. Okay, great. So like I have this conversation constantly with high performers, which is like the psyche is very, very clever because it defends itself. So how would I explain this? So we are not like one person. It's more accurate to say we are more like a community of people. There's one part of me that is very selfish. There's another part of me that's very selfless. There's one part of me that has a lot of drive. There's another part of me that wants to be lazy. So it depends on like what part of me I'm listening to at any given point in time. Now that pattern, that like dysfunctional pattern that's playing out within you or within anyone, it like when we speak about integrating it or transcending it or getting rid of it or whatever, like it needs to come up with a way of defending itself. And so one of the ways it does that, is it defends itself by saying, well, if you get rid of me, you're going to lose these other things that you care about. And the analogy that I give with clients, it would sort of be like you drive a really, 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 really bad car. It's falling apart. It looks terrible, but like it gets the job done. And I've gotten you the deal of a lifetime where we can trade your terrible, terrible car for a Ferrari. And somehow I've scored you this amazing deal. And you and I are standing there at the dealership and I say, here, give me the keys. And you say like, but I'm going to be left without a car. And I go, listen, like only for a second, like I'm just about to get the keys to this Ferrari. It's going to be much better for you. So the psyche is very, very clever as to how it defends itself. And so the other piece, just as it pertains to that, is like false skepticism. So like the whole like bit skeptical about I'm a bit skeptical about getting rid of this or integrating this or transcending this. Like false skepticism is to be skeptical of the world. True skepticism is to be skeptical of my own skepticism. So like it's skepticism, like to be truly skeptical, I have to be skeptical of me. And so like what's the chances that I'm deceiving myself here? Insofar as that I'm lying to myself insofar as that I wouldn't have to change if I'm not willing to make this change or this drive. So there's like a part of our brain that is essentially responsible for homeostasis, right? It's like a thermostat. You had too much heat, the AC kicks in. It gets too cold, and the heater kicks in. And your mind works in just the same way. It doesn't like change, whether that's positive or negative. So you've got to be smarter. That's why I speak about skepticism. You've got to be smarter than your own defense mechanisms.
How do you do that?
So just note, like sometimes people ask me, they'll say, well, Max, like what's the difference between like a healthy high performer and like is there such thing as like a healthy high performer? It sounds like what you're saying is like all high performance is driven by dysfunction. The tell is very, very easy, right? So within okay, so let's lay a bit of context, right, to get to this answer. So when people say that, like one of the things I've been shocked at, Jason, with a lot of people in my space, coaches, personal development practitioners, etc., and I say, what is the actual point of personal development? Like, what's the point? Like, what are we actually developing, firstly? And what are we and if we are developing, what are we supposed to be developing ourselves into? Like, is it different for everybody or is it the same? And and I've been shocked that, if I ask a coach or someone in my space, what's the point of personal development? They'll say, to kick goals and be a winner and, all that stuff. Yeah. And that's all nonsense. Like, personal development, like the underpinnings of personal development is found in philosophy. Philosophy is the original, like personal development. We have Aristotle, we have Marcus Aurelius, we have like all of these amazing thinkers who are basically concerned with like right living. Yeah. Like what does it mean to live really well? And all philosophical schools of thought essentially point to the same thing. And all theological and religious schools of thought point to the same thing. And all New Age spiritual ideas point to the same thing, which is that the point of personal development is what's referred to as self-transcendence, which is that I'm attempting to transcend my own selfishness. In philosophy, they would speak about like becoming at one with the logos. Within religious ideas, they speak about turning yourself over to God and getting the devil out of you. Like when you speak about New Age spiritual ideas, they talk about the higher and lower self, or like the ego and the authentic self and all that sort of stuff. So like it all speaks to the same idea. And so one of the questions that we can ask ourselves is, okay, well, how do I know then that I'm really growing? Yeah, like how do I know that I'm really growing, as opposed to just like adding? Because everybody has seen the deeply dysfunctional and unhappy millionaire, right? It's like, yeah, you can add stuff to yourself, but fundamentally you haven't really grown. You haven't really changed. So how do I know if I'm really growing? Well, it's a really, really clear indicator is the level of selflessness that one has been able to cultivate. Yeah, as opposed to the level of selfishness. So like within developmental psychology, for example, or developmental theory, right, we speak about what are called circles of concern. So at lower stages of development, if I'm a less developed human being, my circle of concern is smaller. It's about me and my needs and what I can get from me. Yeah. Then it extends to me and my family. Me, my family, my friends, my community, my country, all countries, all cultures, all animals, all the environment, all people of all races and all languages, and the cosmos at large. And so one of the ways you can tell whether you're really growing is where does your circle of empathy end? Where does your circle of concern end? That's like a really, really easy way to tell around one's level of development. And so fundamentally, like off the back of being able, like insofar as the journeys that I walk with my clients, off the back of being able to integrate and forgive whatever the dysfunctional experience was that gave birth to your drive. Yeah, it's about reorienting your drive, yet as opposed to healing myself through the acquisition of achievement to now contributing powerfully to the world, right? And contribution is something that we can speak about a lot. So like you have to understand, anywhere from tens to hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors lived in tribes in the forest. And your success measure wasn't your bank account. It wasn't your car, obviously. It wasn't anything to do with you. It was the contribution that you made to that tribe. Did you go and get the berries? Did you go and catch that fish? Did you go and hunt the animal? And if you did, you'd bring back your spoils and you'd be celebrated within your tribe. And this was all sort of well and good, essentially up until like the Industrial Revolution. And post-Industrial Revolution, we had a surplus of goods, yeah, whereby the sort of powers that be were left with a very interesting question, which is how do we convince people to buy more than what they need? Because now we've got enough for everybody. And so began the rise of advertising, yeah, where trade, like in 2025, certainly comparatively to the rest of the world, trade in Western developed countries is not done on the basis of utility, yeah, because we already have more than what we need. Trade is now done on the basis of identity, yeah, so as in what does it mean about me to own something? Yeah, so like the analogy I give, I write about this a little bit in my book, is like if you take something, for example, like a Gucci scarf, right? I don't buy that scarf for the fabric. I buy it because of what it means about me to own it. It says that I'm sophisticated. It says that I'm elegant. It says that I'm successful, whatever it says, yeah? But the problem is so really important. So I'm not buying the thing. I'm buying the story about me, that it means about me to have that thing. But what happens is when next year's scarf is released, the same scarf that I have now no longer says elegance, sophistication, and success. Now it says I'm falling behind. And so we go from item to, and the real trap is that the story is not fixed to the item. It jumps from item to item. And so we're off on this goose chase, chasing this story that is unloyal to the thing that we buy. Yeah. And that's sort of like consumer culture in a nutshell. Now, so like if we can see through that and see that actually I am already complete as I am, right? Then it becomes about, okay, if I can see that, other people in the world are still suffering very greatly. And this is what a conversation I get into with high performers all the time, is I say, is they say, look, if you're a high performer, you're going to be successful at whatever it is that you choose to do. So why don't we try and make the world better as well? And they go, yeah, that's a fair point. And so it's a really, really easy way to tell is like in business, for example, they speak about like missionaries and mercenaries. So a missionary is there's a mission that I'm on to try and make the world better. And the business is a means or a vehicle to achieve that mission. A mercenary is like, I'm in this for me. And I've studied the market and the gaps in the market, and I'm going to colonize and attack that part of the market, yeah, because I'm in this for me. And so, based on where our circle of concern starts and ends, you can basically dictate the health of a high performer.
Fantastic. Yeah, it was really interesting. So, when we think about these concentric circles, and you've got the self in the middle, like the selfishness, ego only concerned about stuff that's directly affecting me.
Yep.
Do you typically find a lot of high performers just stuck in that circle?
Yes, because they are in pain. Because they are in pain. They have been made to feel inadequate in some way, and they're on a mission to prove the contrary to whatever that experience is, which limits their circle of concern. So when we are in pain, it's hard for me to care about others if I have pain to attend to within me.
And how do you, because I imagine one of the things that, like, they won't want to lose their success, right? So how do you pitch it to your clients that it's a weird easy one, isn't it? Because you don't want to say, if you start thinking about everyone else, also you'll make more money, because then it's kind of, do you know what I mean? That's also selfish.
Yeah, but you will. Like, yeah, but the thing, like, okay, so like if we take 2 brain scans, right, and you have someone who's got clinical stress, anxiety, depression, etc., right? What we see is that there's certain parts of the brain that are like hyperstimulated, hyper active. They're like lit up in a brain scan. And you take a healthy person's brain scan, right? Healthy is a relative term, right? So we take yours, Jace. So and I hook you up to EEG, right? And I said, Jason, while you're standing there, do us a favor. Just start thinking about yourself. What we see is like the exact same parts of the brain start to get stimulated. So there is zero neurobiological difference between thinking about myself and feeling miserable. Contrast that with like I think it's called the anterior cingulate cortex, which is responsible for dopamine and serotonin and the feel good feels. Yeah. And like the thing that hyperstimulates that part of the brain is when you do something good for someone else. And so there's no neurobiological difference between doing something good for somebody else and doing something good for me. They're the same. And it makes sense, right? Because like if we've evolved to live out in the wild in these tribes of 50 people, yeah, it's like it makes perfect sense why my brain is wired that way. If I help everybody else, it's good for me. Yeah, but the problem that we have is that we are now living in environments that are out of sync with our own evolutionary biology, which is why we are so emotionally sick. It's why we have the crisis of meaning. It's why we have the loneliness epidemic. It's why we have the mental health crisis. It's not an accident. You know, it's because we're now like the challenge, the problem, or at least as I see it, one of the huge problems within like Western culture is we say like, oh, well, we're all just individuals, man. So like, you know, Jace, things that work for you may not work for me, and things that work for me may not work for you. And that's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. Like human beings are animals. Like you take it, any other species, take dogs, right? Like dogs can have different personalities, I guess. They can have different preferences, I guess, you know, like, but they're all still dogs. What do dogs need? It's like walks, play, food, and affection. And it's like, okay, then you take 2 human beings. One of them's introverted, one of them is extroverted, one of them has, you know, whatever. Like, but they're all still human beings. And so the question becomes like, what are our intrinsic human needs, right? And it's like connection, contribution, community, to feel connected to something bigger than myself, yeah, etc. It doesn't matter our personality type, if you like. Yeah, that's not even language that I like to use, but I'll just say it for the purposes of being expedient. It doesn't matter our personality type. Yeah, like we have these intrinsic needs. And so the really exciting thing is like today, your tribe isn't just like your little corner of the forest. Today, your tribe is the world. You know, you and I are being able to having the fortunate pleasure of being able to contribute to each other. You know, halfway around the world. And so the question that I invite high performers into is like, how do you want to see the world get better? You know, and because it's also my view that the world doesn't move forward through the masses; it moves forward through like exceptional individuals. And the tragedy for high performers is because they're often in pain. Is there's so much good that they could do for the world, yeah, that they don't do because they're caught up in a narrower circle of concern. And so, like on the other side of being able to integrate those things, like that's how, in my view, like that's how the world gets better.
Do your clients struggle with motivation?
Yes. Yes.
That's an interesting dichotomy, isn't it? As high performers.
Yes. Well, the reason they struggle with not every, but a lot of them, like a lot of high performers come to me because they say, Max, you're going to be great for me because I just need someone to hold me accountable. And I say, well, don't you think the conversation we need to be having is how come you feel the need for someone else to hold you accountable in the first place? Because if we could solve that problem, you wouldn't need me at all. And so they bang on and on about this language like discipline and mindset and accountability, but it's all nonsense. It's like they're trying to compensate or correct for something that's not working. You know, and they go, I just need more discipline. I just need more like, like David Goggins or like, that sort of archetype
Yeah.
of or way of
Yeah.
thinking. It's like, fuck your feelings and follow the plan and all that sort of stuff. Like, that's nonsense. It's nonsense. It's like the reason why why you want me to hold you accountable is because on some level you don't want to do this. There's something in you that doesn't actually want to take this course of action. Because if all parts of you are in harmony towards taking this action, yeah, you wouldn't be on the call with me in the first place. So like, there's some sort of misalignment here that you're not wanting to address. And often and when you start picking at that, that's when you find out. It's like, okay, well, why do you actually want to achieve this thing in the first place? And then when you start hearing that story, it's like, oh, okay, well, of course you struggle with motivation.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think I always see analogies with, and I'm sure you do, with business world performance and then athletic performance. And are you familiar with High Rocks? It's basically a newish sport that's come about, which involves people running around and lifting stuff and suffering for 60 to 90 minutes. Something I'm into in quite a big way. And when I first started out, like getting to the gym and getting into training, it definitely was, like 2-3 years ago, was that Goggins energy. Was like, I'm going to prove everyone right. I'm out running at 5 a.m. in the dark, doing cold plunges. And there was this chip on my shoulder because I'd gone through some shit. And then cast forward now and in a much happier place. And the way that I train now is totally different. And I'm able to do it because, and maybe there's a conversation around like the achievement thing, like what's driving the actual achievement. But in terms of like the training and doing the races, I'm in a much more peaceful state of mind, despite it being kind of hell on my body for quite a for a short period of time. And I guess it's like, I think about my performance in like the other side of things, and it's like, how can I get some of that here? Like training and loving it, doing the thing and loving it. And don't get me wrong, like I'm podcasting now and I'm enjoying this conversation. But I think sometimes, like I can find, I'm editing and and I can feel a little bit, but actually, I really enjoy it. So, what's my question here? It's how do you connect those two things? And I know you mentioned you work with athletes, and do they tend to mirror each other?
Yeah. So yeah. So like, it sounds to me as I listen to it that it's the difference between like intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, right? It's like I love having the conversations and the podcasting stuff because I love doing it. Uh, I don't love doing the editing stuff, but I'm willing to do it because of where it can get me, right? So like I'm not motivated to do this thing, but I am motivated to where it can get me. So this becomes like a means to get there.
Yeah.
And so like sometimes when I'm like auditing a high performance schedule, like one of the things we'll go through is like, where are you intrinsically and extrinsically motivated? And sometimes what will happen is we'll run into tasks where it's like, I can't delegate it. I don't enjoy it. I can't delegate it and I'm stuck with it. So like, what do I do about those? And like a really, really easy win that's available is frame up the task in your own mind as to who else benefits from this getting done besides you. So, you know, your viewers benefit from it, your listeners benefit from it, your team benefits from it, your family benefits from it. Like who benefit like who benefits from this task, and you know, sort of pulling at all those threads. And you'll say, right, well, if I don't enjoy it, can I do it as a way of contributing to them? It's like, yeah, of course I can. You know, and so that's an easy win that's available there.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's something where I think I've deployed it intermittently in the past, where you kind of like step outside of Jason's world and go like, okay, if this could help one person, like that'd be fucking amazing. And actually, I noticed on your intake form that you mentioned something along the similar levels, like if we could just help one person, like that's awesome. And I'm totally with you there. It's interesting. I don't know if you do much on social media, but that's quite a good it's a good lens as well, where sometimes I can ask myself, who's this for? Is it just for me? Like, you know, am I just putting this video on to like show off me doing some race or whatever? And that's okay, but I think it's like self-awareness. But then other times, and it's funny you should mention the anterior mid-cingulate cortex, because I did a video on this a few years ago, because I was so interested in it and I just wanted to help people. And I had this like thing of like, this should help someone. And it really did change the temperature of like my motivation.
Yes.
And it the content ended up being better because of that.
That's your evolutionary biology shining through. That's right. That's exactly
So
right. It's not an accident. It's like, you know, it's like all of it. Like it's not difficult to work out. Like if you just pay attention, you know, to it for a moment. It's like, of course, that makes sense. Of course, that's why you feel better. And I say you, not you in the royal sense. Why we feel better. Of course, that's why we feel better when we do good things for others. Because it's like, yeah, because for hundreds, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of years, that was the lifeline. It was like doing good for the people around you. So then that way you'd secure your place in the tribe, and we'd all continue to survive. You know, and people go like, wow, you know, like they think that's like you know, it's like without any context, it seems like such a wacky, mind blowing idea that, wow, isn't that amazing how doing good for other people like makes me feel good? And it's like, well, no, it's not that wacky at all. It makes perfect evolutionary sense. You know, it's the same like if I go like, I don't know, when do you feel most at peace? And people go like walking through nature, on the beach, like up in the mountains, you know, whatever. What, you mean the place where we evolved for tens, if not hundreds of
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, oh yeah, like, you know, it's of course you feel better in those spaces.
Yeah, and it sounds it seems so obvious, doesn't it? Now when you lay it out that way. I had the last conversation I had this week was with someone who does mindset training, a chap called Colin Henderson, and we we're talking about frameworks. I want to get into frameworks and practices and habits and stuff with you. And one of the things that I was asking him was about, like, I do my meditation in the morning, but what is like a set of like things that I can ask myself? Like I love reflections or cues and just little kind of processes to follow. And one of the things he had was he did like 4 minutes. First minute was just grounding yourself, becoming present. For the second one was like reminding yourself of what you have, like a bit of a gratitude, like I'm so lucky to have all this stuff. The second one was I am, which was like I am brave, I am this, whatever the three things that you've kind of set out to say. And then I will, which is your intention for the day. Or I'm going to be present with my guest, I'm going to be whatever it may be. Based upon what we've just been talking about, certainly in that motivational lens, how would you alter that or add in something to ensure that we cover a little bit more than what was just mentioned?
Well, it's it'll be no surprise that I'm a huge proponent of meditation,
Mm-hmm.
but I think there's a huge misconception in Western culture as it pertains to the purpose of meditation. So, in Western culture, I speak generally, of course, but we generally believe that the purpose of meditation is to help me feel relaxed. That it's supposed to calm my mind and center my thoughts. And again, that's all rubbish. Like the analogy for, or one way of an analogous way of understanding meditation is sort of like this. If you go to a therapist, say I go to a therapist, right, or a psychologist, and I sit down on the couch and lie down and they go, Max, tell us about your childhood. And I go, oh, well, like there were some things that are a bit tough, but, I'm pretty happy with how I've ended up. So it was all good in the end. And they go, you mentioned that some things are a little bit tough. Like, tell us about those. I go, well, I don't know. Like, I guess I wish I was a little bit closer with my mum. She had to work a lot, and I suppose I wish I got to spend a bit more time with her, but she was an adult and she was doing her best, and we have a good relationship now, so it was all good in the end. And they go, what was that like for you to be at home and want to spend a bit more time with her when you were a kid? I go, well, yeah, I felt a bit lonely. And like, so what they're trying to do, like they're trying to get the wounded part of me to talk. Do you know what I mean? Not the adult in me. They're trying to get like the part of me that hasn't integrated that to step forward and to speak. And if that part of me can speak, then that part of me can get worked on. Yeah. Now, why do I share that in the context of meditation? Because meditation works in the exact same way. You, as the observer, when you just allow whatever is happening in your experience to happen, you act as the space whereby unresolved emotional patterns, dysfunctional behaviors, repressed memories, etc., can come to the surface if you're patient and you allow that to happen. That process is pretty painful to actually allow that to happen. But if you can be patient with it and it surfaces, generally what happens is that it resolves itself. There's some insight, that there's some interconnection that the brain makes whereby forgiveness is found, or peace is found, or reconciliation is found, and it leaves you. And then you get your peace, right? But what happens is, particularly as I've seen it in Western culture, is when people who are beginners, like, oh, how do I begin my meditation practice? What happens is they close their eyes, and what they find is that their mind just goes absolutely mad, and they feel terribly uncomfortable, and there's aches in the body, and there's like, oh God, there's a memory that I had from third grade, which I haven't thought about in a long time. And they go like, oh, I just must not be good at this. And I go, no, that's exactly what's supposed to happen. That's you're doing it perfectly. That's what's supposed to happen. It's like, you got to be able to go through that bit and be patient and just hold space for it. And if you do that, it will resolve itself. But that can take, a year to really, really get that practice, really firing, and actually to see the learning curve, of and the results that you get from such a practice. So all that stuff so, okay, and one more thing. So if we look at the definition of the word peace, yeah, like the definition is an absence of conflict. So if there's conflict, we don't have peace. But if you have no conflict, you have peace, right? And so it's my view that as we go deeper and deeper into meditation, as these things start to resolve themselves, it leaves space for new things to occur, new ideas, new insights, new whatevers. And so I'm more in the camp of let me resolve everything about myself that is dysfunctional. So there's like an ancient Indian philosophical school of thoughts called Advaita Vedanta, and their process of personal development, it's deeper than this, but they encapsulate it by calling it neti neti, which is not this, not this. So if you imagine like a block of marble, Michelangelo is in that block. I just can't see him because I need to get rid of everything that's not Michelangelo. Yeah. And so in just the same way, when we meditate, we are removing more and more things that are not us, not really us, but are more patterns that we've picked up or mimetic desires that we have, etc. And the whole like, let me really set my mind to what I want to achieve today sort of stuff, yeah, is like that. Anything that comes from anything that, what would you say? Anything that I purport as a goal is going to be cut up by all of that dysfunction that I haven't worked my way through. And so I'm a lot more in the camp of like, let me just work on myself and I'll let for want of a better way of saying it, and I'll let the universe sort of guide what I'm interested in.
It's interesting. And yeah, and I had someone on the other week who was more in that camp, shedding the ego and just kind of getting to the true self. And it does seem like within the self-development world, there is like these kind of two ends of the spectrum in terms of sort of like meta approaches, I guess. Regarding meditation, you mentioned that you're doing like 3-4 hours a day.
Oh yeah.
Which is pretty hardcore. Like I've done roughly 10 minutes a day for the last 10 years or something, and I was pretty proud of that. And I think the other day I did an hour. I stared at the wall for an hour. I was like, I'll just see what comes up, which was interesting. It was the first time I've ever done. It was good. Do you ever do eyes open as well? I did eyes open.
Yeah, here and there, I guess.
Yeah, eyes open is trippy. Like it's really fascinating what happens to your visual system after a certain amount of time. It's just like I could be on mushrooms, but yeah, I think it was hard because I was going into it kind of maybe I had a bit of an agenda because I was kind of like because I did want to uncover a way to like try and find what was going on, like but the thing I came out with was I think it was about 50 minutes in, and then I actually had a voice recorder sat next to me, and then I just spoke out loud and I just said, I want to help people. And that was what came out.
Yep.
Who knows? Maybe everyone's is like that. Because we talk about with what we were just talking about with motivation and community, etc., and the evolutionary biology, that seems like it's at center anyways.
Yes, that's right. Well, I would argue that, yes.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is, how do you think like we need to be doing like 4 to 6 hours a day to find this, or are there other ways to do it other than psychedelics?
Psychedelics work. Psychedelics are one of the best technologies.
Hiring Max.
Oh yeah, that's right. Psychedelics are very effective. Legality depends on your country. There's loads of ways, but the sort of the meta point or like the meta content around that is the same, which is like the thing that you're looking for. The thing that you're looking for is to transcend more and more and more of your selfishness.
Mm.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Yeah.
Like,
and you're right, and
it's one. Sorry, last thing. It's one thing I'd say to high performers all the time. You know, for all of you guys who are looking for like the life hacks. You know, it's like, well, the fucking life hack of life hacks is that if you want a better life, stop thinking about you so much.
Mm. All right, so back to my earlier point, and I know you didn't want to be like potentially like drawn into the whole kind of like prompts on how I'm going to be in the what's the word, manifestations, what's the fucking word, like affirmations.
Law of
Sorry, you didn't want to
oh,
be talking
sorry.
about affirmations or anything like that, but in terms of, do you think it's literally just sitting with yourself, or is it worth maybe just having something like, I don't know, asking yourself, how would I show up today if everything wasn't if I wasn't so motivated about my self-interest?
Um, no, I'm more in the camp of just sit with yourself. Like sit with
Mm,
yourself and allow that process to unfold. And uh, self-worth is, in my view, it is earned through doing good for others.
mm,
And so it's not found in like talking myself into it. It's like finding purpose that extends beyond me and my immediate concerns.
mhm,
Yeah, like that is the pathway to self-esteem, if you like, because the evidence of your own life will show you that you are somebody worth respecting. It won't be something where you have to like look at yourself in the mirror and say like I'm amazing, you know, and like try and like gaslight yourself into thinking that you're amazing, even if you're ruthlessly selfish. Um, 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 and you know, to your point earlier around the whole commercial conversation for high performers, like the irony is when you're oriented towards making the world better, you'll make more money because the marketplace rewards people who bring value, and your ideas will resonate, your output goes up, and you can sustain it for longer periods of time because it's not about me anymore. um, People will want to work with you, and so the whole thing around you know, I want to be like this, I want to be like that, you know, and so on and so forth. It's like I'm more in the camp of like, this is the difference that I'm wanting to make into this person's life today. This is how I'm wanting to help them today, etc. And
mm.
counterintuitively, you'll feel more amazing than if you're shouting at yourself saying, "I'm amazing."
Yeah, sometimes I wrote down like once. Do you have children?
No, not yet.
Yeah, same. Not yet. And like I've written down in the past, like just like trying to motivate myself, thinking about like my future family rather than me. But I don't know whether, again, maybe you kind of don't prescribe to that kind of prompting as such. But I think it's like, why, in terms of me, like, why am I here? Like, I feel like my number one mission is in life is to have children.
Yep.
And when it's me living on my own in this house or whatever, in this room or whatever, it can be hard to kind of put yourself in that frame, if that makes sense. So for me, it's like a good thing to be like, why are we doing this? But I don't know. But I don't know. But you could argue that by doing that, I'm also not living in the present, and I'm trying to.
No, no, no. Look, I'm not. I'm not. I'm not. I'm not discounting or discrediting the power of intentionality. That's not.
Mm,
That's not what's being suggested. That's not what's being suggested. The thing, the I'm more interested in like the structural development of what is the thing that actually gives birth to the thing that I want. So, you know, it's like what are my goals today? It's like, well, I want to achieve this, this, and this. Well, why those things? Well, those things because, and if it's like insert something that you can feel when it's a low consciousness, self centered reason. And you can also feel the inverse when it's a higher consciousness reason. And so I think like that's why I'm a big advocate for like, who do I want to help? It's because generally it will sit in that higher frequency sort of space.
Mm. All right. What the fuck do you actually want? Finding a life with purpose. Why this book?
So the book originally began as the documentation of the patterns that I'd observed in my work. Because, like I said, the thing that's unique about us all is that we all think we're unique and we're not. And so it became about documenting the patterns that I'd observed in working with, doing over 1,500 hours with high performers every single year. And so it began originally as 100 research articles around all of these different patterns that I'd noticed. Then I collapsed it all together and put it in some sort of sequence around like normally they start here. These are the insights they have along the way. This is where they get stuck. This is what helps them get through that. And this is where they end up at the end. So I put it into these like 6 chapters, which were like 6 questions. The first one is like, what the hell is going on? Second one is, how do I get out? Third one is, where do I start? Fourth one is, why do I even need a purpose beyond myself? Fifth one is, what's in it for me? And sixth one is, calling me a hero is a bit much, isn't it? So it's like these 6 like chapters where every chapter begins with like a wake up call where I'm like quite direct with the reader. It then moves into a deeper sort of philosophical exploration as to why, as to like the structural awareness of why this is the way that it is. Then it goes into like 3 client stories that get followed throughout the whole book. Two of them embrace that, and one of them doesn't. So one of them was the worst outcome of my entire career, and I put and so it shows like the arc of the 2 that make it and the one that doesn't, and what actually plays out in their lives when one embraces a purpose beyond themselves and when one doesn't. And then it goes through some exercises at the end of every chapter. So it's a much more affordable way of working with me, if you like.
Would you be willing to tap into some of those stories for us?
Yeah, sure. So so there's 3 characters that get followed. So they're called Vanessa, Alex, and Danny. And Vanessa is a high flying executive. Alex was the son of one of my clients who was a young university student who was caught between what he wanted and what he thought he was supposed to want. And Danny ran a car yard, like a not a car yard, like a he was a mechanic basically, and so Vanessa's story, is really about her wanting greater levels of productivity, but even on the other side of achieving them, and she got her promotion and a few other bits and pieces, she was still unhappy. And then we started to get into conversations about what would actually make her happy, and she started to speak about the relationship with her grandmother, and she went on this mission to start a home whereby the last 10 years of your life would be the best. And so it walks through her journey from leaving that job to finding what she wanted to do. Alex, who's the young university student, is caught between what he wanted and what he thought he was supposed to want, and the pressure from both of his parents, because his mum believes that he should pursue the safe thing. Dad wants to encourage him to step out there, and that was a point of tension in his house. And so it walks through his journey. And then Danny doesn't change.
What could he have done differently? What were the pivotal moments in his journey where you think you may have had a more positive outcome?
His self-worth was tied up in the business. And that's a big mistake for many high performers. I am only valuable if the business is doing well. And if the business is not doing well, then there's something wrong with me.
You think a lot of people attach the same thing with money as well?
Yes, you could say that, yes.
Yeah, I feel like that may be even more of a universal thing as well. Like not necessarily just on entrepreneurs.
Yeah, yeah, money's an interesting one. I was turning up to a coaching session on a cafe at the beach. I'm blessed to say I sort of live on the water at Balmoral Beach in Sydney. One of my clients who's very, very successful and drives a Ferrari, and he turned up. We literally parked side by side with each other, um, and he got out of his car and I got out of mine. He said, "Don't you think it's funny that you're coaching me, yet I'm so much richer than you?" And I said, "Yes, but I'm much happier than you are." And so, I suppose it depends on how you define wealth in the end.
Yeah, 100%. It's like everything has to. Obviously, everything is your relationship to it and the lens in which you see it. And
Hmm.
like I think of probably the time in my life when I had more finances available than I do now, shall we say. I was so much less bothered about stuff that made you look or feel well off, right?
Hmm.
But I think because I was kind of, I don't know, I was just happy, or like and I think, you know, I wouldn't think twice about, like, I don't know, turning up at the pub, like, you know, dressed in just like my casual gear or whatever. And where it seems like we see this, don't you, with people who are struggling financially, and then of course, what do they look to do? They want to be glamorous, they want big earrings, they want big logos, they want everything to look like they are well off, rather than, you know. And then we see like Silicon Valley now, and most of the time the founders dress casually. They're in hoodies, and so they don't need to be in a suit. There's nothing kind of that shouts more low status these days than someone turning up in a suit. Your book talks about stripping away the expectations placed on you.
Yes,
What does
definitely.
that mean?
So, a vast majority of our desires are mimetic. So, basically, what that means is that we inherit them. So, we inherit them from our family dynamics, from our culture, from our emotional pain points, from our experiences, through what we're exposed to, etc., etc. We're sort of living in reaction to these things. And so the emphasis sort of in the title, you know, I know it's got an expletive in there, but fundamentally it's on the word you. Like, what do you actually want? Yeah, because most people are living a life that's not even theirs, being pulled by strings that they didn't create. Like I was. Like, it's a great example, right? Like, if I hadn't had that experience with that guy on the side of the road in India, you know, that would have been me. Definitely, definitely. Like, and I would never have become conscious of that belief. I just would have, you know, said, "Oh, I need more discipline and drive," and you know, I would have been exactly one of those people that I work with, and so, and so, a lot of our desires are imitative, and so it comes down to being able to pass out, like, what do I want, yeah, versus what have I been sort of taught or told to want.
Mm. Yeah, that's so true. And I guess it comes back to what you were saying before about getting familiar and with your true self and that reflective work. What do you, if you could prescribe a like meditation practice to your clients or anyone listening, what would you recommend uh,
Um,
they
so
start
I
with?
wouldn't have, yeah. So like I wouldn't. You don't have to start with meditation necessarily. Like there's three. Like in the chapter, like where do I start? You know, like the three sort of invitations are, number one is forgiveness. So like writing down everyone who's hurt you or you've hurt them, going clearing that up. Number two is the awareness of one's own mortality, so that you are actually not going to be here for much longer, and it will go by very quickly. And so there is no safe road. And then number three is the cultivation of radical honesty. So it's like, if I can get free of all of that and recognize that I'm not here for a while, so there is no safe road, what do I want? Like, that's a really, really good place to start.
I have death in Spanish written on my wrist for similar reasons.
Yes.
Which takes me back to a moment where like I just had this like epiphany of like, oh yeah, like this is all going to end pretty soon, so might as well be free of it.
Much sooner than we realize. Yes.
What's one question that people never ask you which you wish they would?
How do I learn to cultivate deeper levels of forgiveness?
How do I learn?
Yeah. Or how do I forgive? Like, how do I forgive?
How do we forgive? Is my next question.
Yeah. Again, I come back to that piece around, it's an insight. It's an insight. Like, the things that those people or that person did to you were not about you. Like, we see it, you can see it from a first person perspective, right? It's like any wrong that we've ever done somebody else, it's like, it's almost never about them. Never. It's always just like, I was like, we get upset at our partners or our spouses or our kids or our colleagues or whatever. Like, it's never about them. Never. It's always just like, I was caught up with myself. I was tired. I was this. I was that. It's like so. What are the chances when other people do that to me? It's like, it's actually about me. But the problem is, like, we make it about us. You see. I'm reminded of Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning. And I think this is, so the story goes, when he got out of the concentration camps and they were doing like psychosomatic tests on his body and many of the other survivors to test for like signs of trauma. And they couldn't find any in his muscles. Like, so by all rights, his body had completely integrated all the experiences or hadn't picked up any of the experiences. And they asked him, like, are you okay? And he said, yeah, no, I'm fine. And they said, how on earth are you okay? Like, with what you've just been through. And he says, they, and by they, he means the Nazis, they can take everything from me, but the one thing that they can never take from me is the meaning that I give what happened. So I forgive them. And I come back to that in my own life. It's like, grow up, Max. Like, if he can do it there, you can do it here.
Fuck yeah. Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. I'm gonna bring this to a close shortly. A couple more questions before we finish out. One would be, how can we ensure that someone listening today goes away thinking about their potential in a different manner?
You're going to be dead very soon, so you haven't got time to lose. And so will I, and so will we all. So that's an easy win for them. Cultivate your own mortality. You're not here for very long.
Any future plans? What have you got on the horizon?
hopefully just to keep working on myself.
That's cool. No surprise. I was expecting. I didn't know if you want to say hours of meditation. How like how often? How many hours a day do you meditate at the moment? Out of interest.
I don't. It's difficult to say because the boundary, like the really, when I first started, and I posit that this would be the case for everybody, but when I first started my practice, there was a very, very clear line between now I am meditating and now I am not. And you like your experience, staring at the wall for an hour, and like when it's over, there's still a part of you that's, what would you say, in that state, if you like. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's been more than, well, basically a decade of practice, and it's getting more and more difficult to discern where the start and finish of meditation actually, where does meditation actually start and finish. So but a formal practice, not as much these days.
Okay. Where should people go if they want to check out more about Max Stevens?
They can just come to the website, maxstevenscoaching.com. Stevens is spelled with a PH, and yeah, they can they're welcome to have a chat with me there if they want to.
Thank you so much. This has been awesome. It's been really fascinating hearing all your insights, and I appreciate your generosity in this conversation. So thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you too.
Hey guys, it's me. Just a quick one before you get going. Thank you so much for making it all the way to the end. I really appreciate it. Don't forget, you can check out links to my guests via the episode description below. And a reminder to claim your free VIP pass month at Indiip. Go to indiip.com/podcast. That's indiip.com/podcast. If you're looking to improve your life and build habits, I really think you're going to love this tool. All links are in the episode description. Thanks for watching, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one.